Welcome to episode 2. I'm not junk journaling today because I have been struggling with some dizziness and it's been really, really bad and it's been hard to function. But I didn't want to hold that or let that hold me back from being able to share. And I'm excited for our next topic. I said a lot in the first video, and so I want to unpack each topic a little deeper. So today we're going to talk about budgeting. What is budgeting? Budgeting is just a money plan. It is sitting and creating an intention behind how you, in particular, want to use your dollars. All it is a space for you to say, here are the things that I care about, and I want it to be reflected in my budget. Who's responsible for creating the budget? Well, you are. Who's responsible to maintain the budget? You are. And who's responsible to making sure that you stay or remain in budget? You are. But how do we do this in a way where we can create a budget that honors each of our individuality? And this is why I call my budgeting approach joy-based budgeting. What I believe is that each of us values and deeply cares about things in different ways, which means that what brings me joy may not bring you joy. And so how do we sit in the space of allowing ourselves to have permission to say, these are the things that I deeply care about. I want it to be reflected in my money plan. And so that's how I have created my budget. Now, because I'm married and have a family, my joys may be different than the rest of my families. And so, how do we sit and acknowledge and honor the fact that we each have different joys? And how can we create a money plan to reflect that? I'll dig into this a little deeper in a little bit, but I do want to share a caveat to this. I said in my first video that we cannot budget ourselves out of financial instability, and that this matters because if we are being underpaid or we are underemployed, then it's really hard to move towards stability. What do I mean by that? Oftentimes, it's assumed that if we are financially struggling or find ourselves being low income, the assumption is that we don't know how to budget. And the reality is that low income people are some of the best, most resourceful people ever. So it's not that we don't know how to budget, it's that we may not be paid a living wage. And that's a reality that so many of us are experiencing. So, how do you know if you are being underpaid or underemployed? Where there's a really cool resource that I use called the MIT Living Wage. I'll drop the link in the show notes. With that being said, you can use this link and you can put in your city and your state or your county and be able to figure out how much you should be earning depending on your home context. So if you're single versus if you are a family of 4, but only one of you are working, etc. This gives a really good idea around what you should be making to make a living wage. Keep in mind, though, that this is just based on your needs. It's not even based on joys, savings, and giving, if that's something that you value. So I just want to share this because, especially as women, we are often underpaid or underemployed because we have taken off time from our careers to be able to stay home with our children. Again, nothing wrong with that, but it creates a wage gap. And so, how do we build sustainable lives when we're being underpaid and underemployed? I think that's a conversation for another video. So I'll pause here with it, but I want to acknowledge before I move on with how we can budget in a way that is joy based, I wanted to acknowledge the real challenges and barriers that exist when it comes to not being paid enough or underemployed, meaning working part time. You don't have a full time job because there's a limitation around having a full time job. With this being said, let's go back to budgeting. So when we think about our budget, I don't necessarily follow a percentage guide because there have been different seasons in my life where 90% of my income went to needs. That was just the reality. We were low income at that time. There was no space for joys. And in other seasons of life, we've had various incomes throughout adulthood. And throughout those seasons has also indicated whether or not maybe we could follow a 50% needs, 20% wants, et cetera, et cetera. So I personally do not believe in one set percentage budgeting plan. It's different for everybody, and what that looks like and how we can create our goals around it and the kind of income increases we're trying to experience could then influence those percentages. So let me give you an example. In this current season of life, my needs are now 50%, my joys are 10%, my savings is 30% and my giving is 10%. Why is my savings so high? Because in this season of life, I'm raising a chronically ill or medically complex child who has a lot of medical needs, which means that our medical expenses are extremely high. I need to save not just for my deductible, but for a max out of pocket for a family of five. And so I have to intentionally save for that so that it does not put us in debt and that I can be able to meet all of her needs and it not be a financial stress to our family. So, yeah, would I love more joys in our lives? Absolutely. But in this season of life, my focus is on the physical well being of my child. That doesn't mean that we don't have, joys in our budget. We do. It just means that we have to save a significant amount for our medical expenses. And I know that I'm not the only one who is facing this reality, right? And so the fact that we even get to live 10% with our joys, I think is really exciting and it's fun. And for us, our goal has always been to try to live off of less than what we're earning, especially now because we're in a season where we can. 2 years ago, we couldn't. We were low income. We had to live on a very tight budget. Now, even in that, I think maybe we had a 2% Joy's budget because even because we are low income doesn't mean that we don't want to experience joy. Now, why do I think joy is so needed in our money and our relationship with money? I think joy is needed because how do we live purposeful lives if we are disconnected between who we are as individuals, how we engage in the world, and our relationship to money? There's no way. It's impossible. But oftentimes we're told the story that joy or fulfillment looks a certain way. It looks like the big house. It looks like the fancy car. It looks like XYZ. You can fill in the blank. And that looks different for everybody. But what if that actually doesn't bring you joy? What if what brings you joy is coffee dates or going on hikes or traveling to new cities? And how do we create our budget in a way that then allows us to explore or have those opportunities? And I think that's why I love talking about money in this way. It's a reframe, right? It's not necessarily that this is the perfect way to do it. It's how do we create the intention behind our dollars, recognizing that our money is just a tool. And it's a tool that allows us to create impact, an impact in the lives of ourselves, of the lives of our loved ones, and the lives of our community. And so I hope that if you watched this video that you would take the time to look at your budget, look at your spending and say, where is joy in this? Where are my values in my spending? And if there aren't any or you don't see it displayed or expressed, how can you pivot? How can you make some shifts that allows you then to be able to experience joy? Now, I'm not saying to live beyond what you're earning. What I am saying is what shifts can you make here and there that then allows you to experience joy? And what would it look like if you looked at your spending through the lens of joy as opposed to the lens of shame or saying, I spent too much or I did XYZ? Now, yes, we need boundaries and we need a plan, and that's important. But I wonder what it looks like to add joy if joy is not already in our budget into it. Now, let's talk a little bit more about boundaries. Boundaries really is you creating a money plan for yourself that sets a boundary or a limit on how much you can spend in a certain category. So if your limit for eating out is $200, then that's the boundary that you've placed for yourself. And the best thing that you can do for your current self and to love your future self really well is to say, hey, I'm going to honor the boundary I have set for myself or the limit on eating out because this is how I'm moving towards certain goals. I'm saving for a vacation that's taking place in 6 months. And so when I honor my boundary or my limit of eating out, I then can be able to save the way that I'm looking to save. So it is your present self loving your future self really well. This is another reason why we save and invest for retirement. We'll talk more about that another time, but it is a way to love yourself really well now for your future self. If you love this topic and this reframe around what it looks like to create a joy based budget, check out my new ebook. I'm so excited. It's brand new. It comes with the ebook, a workbook, a budget template, and resources, and how you can create an intentional money plan that reflects the things that brings you joy and the things that you value. Let me know what questions you have down below. I'd love to answer any of them that you have. Thanks very much for being here, and thanks for giving me grace for not journaling or junk journaling this time around.